We're all frustrated with the Chicago Bears offense and their slow start to the 2024 season. But Caleb Williams is making incremental progress in each game, and that's ultimately what's more important.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on all of your favorite social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On the show today, we look at Caleb Williams' development now through 3 games from week 1 to week 2 to week 3 and see where he's getting better and why that's ultimately the most important thing. Haven't had a chance to rewatch the game, going through some of the All-22 film. You can kind of see a lot of reason to be encouraged by what the quarterback is doing, even if we're all pretty frustrated with a lot of the rest of the offense. But even within Shane Waldron and the supporting cast around Caleb, I think you can see signs of, I don't know if progress is quite the right word, but a willingness to change, adapt, have some self-awareness about some things that are working and some things that aren't working. And maybe that could then lead to more visible progress from then on out. And I also want to focus in on this Bears offensive line, where I think the problems up front are becoming a lot more clear on what the issue is. And there might not be an immediate solution, but a solution could be coming here in the near future. But the story of the season is all about Caleb Williams. It always will be for 2024. And it's more important than just winning and losing. It's what Caleb Williams does. Because we've all said from the start here that this 2024 year, Caleb's rookie season, was never going to be the Bears' big shot to go to the Super Bowl. You know, this is their window where you gotta make that big playoff run now. Like, the feeling for this season was always like, hey, if they could make the playoffs, that'd be cool. But the main thing they need out of this rookie season is to bring Caleb Williams along, develop him, and really get that confidence that this is your franchise number 1 overall pick quarterback to lead you in the long-term future. And we said on the front end in our season prediction episodes and stuff, Bears are going to win some games that they shouldn't win and lose some games that they shouldn't lose. And they're going to be frustrating and volatile at times. And we've seen all of that. And I think even more important than them being 1-2 right now and losing a frustrating game to the Colts and the Texans is Caleb Williams getting better from week 1 to week 2 and now week 2 to week 3. And that doesn't mean every week he's going to get better compared to the previous week. There's going to be steps back as well. But we are seeing early on through these frustrating moments that he is improving significantly from game to game. This Colts game, obviously the most productive in the box score, and that's kind of the obvious sign of progress there. A Chicago Bears rookie record for passing yards in a single game, almost a record for pass attempts in a game by a Bears quarterback. He's over 50 pass attempts in this game, which helps to get the passing yards, but nonetheless, handled that situation well. But I think when you look at how he threw the ball, where he threw the ball, to whom he threw the ball, there's signs of progress in all of those areas. Yes, 2 interceptions, one of which was pretty bad. The other one, more like a 50-50 ball that got a little bit unlucky. One a lot later, trying to throw to DeAndre Carter. Can't throw that pass, bad decision. Needs to learn from that. But beyond that, you see him making plays out of the pocket. You see him getting the passing game going downfield and distributing the ball across the field to a variety of players. He's hitting throws over the middle of the field fairly consistently. Now, downfield accuracy, he's still trying to hone in, but the underneath stuff, it's not like there were a lot of days in the early Mitch Trubisky days and even the early Justin Fields days where all they could really throw was to the sidelines. Out the numbers and farther out, or really, that area of the field, because it's a little bit easier. There's less field to read. You don't have to know the full coverage. You just kind of can read 1 or 2 players and throw to that area. And certainly the Bears have gone to those passes to get Caleb Williams rolling, but it's not been his only option to move the ball. Then you add in, some of these intermediate throws over the middle, and then some deep throws downfield connecting with Rome Odunze on a couple of big bombs, down the field. You get DJ Moore, I think, had a big play downfield. Cole Kmet kind of eating in that intermediate area. And that's another key factor here is that all these different receivers are getting involved. When Caleb has, this big game, it's not like everything is just getting funneled to one guy because he just trusts this one wide receiver and is just going to force the ball to him over and over again and have a big game. It's 10 catches to Cole Kmet, 10 or so to Rome Odunze, 10 or so to DJ Moore, 100 yards-ish, to each guy, not exactly 100 each guy, but you know what I mean? Like significant production from multiple receivers in multiple areas of the field. It's not just guys making big plays for him after the catch. It's him hitting really nice passes to players downfield and missing some as well and still needing to be better on those, but being able to sort of mature in this offense and slowly open things up in the passing game while not having a running game makes it that much more impressive to me. It's one thing if you're running the ball really well, so the defense is so focused on trying to stop DeAndre Swift that they're not covering guys deep. They're not putting as many guys back deep to cover guys, and it's easier throws for Caleb. But they know the Bears are down 2 scores in this game and need to pass. And he's still able to hit some of these deep downfield throws to open some things up and just trusting in his playmakers, trusting in, hey, Cole Kmet's going to catch this for 6 yards, and that's okay. Doesn't always have to be the huge, big first down play, but you could get 6 yards and make it second and short or third and short or whatever it is. His average depth of target is increasing from week 1 to week 2 to week 3. You're also seeing his average time to throw from snap to release of the ball speeding up from week 1 to week 2 to week 3. He is not, quote unquote, holding onto the ball too long. There are individual plays where he holds onto the ball too long. But over the course of a game and these 50-plus pass attempts, on average, he's getting the ball out quickly and having success when he does so. Sometimes it's necessity from the offensive line, but nonetheless, it is rhythm passing one way or the other. But on that same note, Caleb Williams is also seeing pressure from the offensive line converted into sacks at a lower and lower rate. That the offensive line doesn't control whether it's a sack versus a pressure, right? Caleb controls whether he gets sacked on a play. He's going to feel the pressure, and if he gets rid of it, it's not a sack, it's a hit. The difference between a sack and a hit is only purely whether Caleb Williams throws the ball before the hit gets there or not. And he has control over when he throws the ball there. Obviously, the time of the pressure impacts how quickly he'll get rid of the ball, etc. But quarterback has a lot of say on how many times they get sacked. Not as much on how much pressure they have, but how many times they get sacked. And Caleb Williams' pressure to sack percentage, the percentage of plays where he's pressured that then also are sacked plays, is also going down. He's doing a better job of not taking sacks when he can ever avoid them. There's always going to be sacks that are just unavoidable, but he's doing a good job of having fewer of the avoidable sacks. And one other thing, you remember in week 1 and some in the preseason as well, Caleb Williams had 3 batted passes in week 1. And it was a storyline during training camp, and it was a storyline during the preseason. Oh no, is Caleb Williams, tall enough to play quarterback? Is our defensive line's just going to keep batting his passes down at the line of scrimmage? Is this going to be a problem for him? Is he going to have to adjust how he plays quarterback? Well, since week 1, in the last 2 games, Caleb Williams has had 1 pass batted at the line of scrimmage. So whatever small panic or concern there may have been, I didn't think there was a super real narrative, but people were talking about it. That's gone. The batted passes thing is not going to be an overwhelming issue. He's still going to get passes batted sometimes. Every quarterback gets passes batted sometimes. But he's found ways to adjust his arm angle and figure out how to throw the ball between the big guys up front and get passes off downfield. So all of these are areas where Caleb is doing very well and getting better from week to week. He's calling protections better at the line of scrimmage. He's changing in and out of plays better. He is operating this offense from a pre-snap standpoint very, very well. For him individually, it's a lot of just dialing in some of the accuracy stuff downfield and then not getting baited in some stupid mistakes on the interception and, still being diligent in the pocket to not try and do too much heroic escapism. And sometimes he's getting better at just throwing the ball away too. But, more of that is in Caleb Williams' future for sure. So then it comes down to, okay, as Caleb gets better, can the rest of the offense please get better around him too? And I think maybe there's some signs of willingness to change from the Bears offense, but we'll see. I don't know if that's going to be enough, but it's a start. So we'll take a look at what could be different for this Bears team moving forward to help this offense get off the ground a little bit next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to find the right candidates for your team faster and for free. See, the thing is, LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. Like, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not looking for a new job. But, if the right offer came around on LinkedIn, okay, maybe I'd take a look, but I'm not going to go searching on other job boards to find a job because I'm not really looking for one right now. And that's what makes LinkedIn so much different. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. As Caleb Williams continues to get better, the Bears offense as a whole should just naturally get better. As the quarterback play gets better, the offense as a whole will perform better, but the players around him need to hold up their end of the bargain and continue getting better as well. And it's not as though a bad player is just all of a sudden going to become good 4 weeks into the season and just unlock something that they haven't been able to do the first 4 weeks of the season. But your offensive coordinator could start to use players differently to either put players in a better position to be successful or stop putting them in positions to fail. I think about Khalil Herbert getting a lot of those short yardage goal line carries when it seems like Roschon Johnson is more of your strong power back. Like Khalil Herbert's 5'9", 210, 205, and Roschon Johnson's 6'1", 225, 230. Like you'd think something simple like, hey, give it to your biggest, strongest running back on the goal line or in third and short situations instead of kind of your small. I don't know if Khalil's your smallest running back, but one of your smaller running backs there just doesn't quite. And little things like that, or like we talked about it on yesterday's podcast, maybe don't ask wide receiver DeAndre Carter to block a defensive end at the goal line or to be the blocker on a screen for a tight end, Cole Kmet, like things like that. But also just in terms of how the Bears use their players on offense. And even through 3 games, as the offense as a whole has gotten kind of, marginally better each week, we are seeing some maybe subtle, but still changes nonetheless in how some of the offensive personnel is being used, specifically at running back and at tight end. I think there's been a pretty growing chorus of Chicago Bears fans who want to see fewer snaps for DeAndre Swift and more snaps for Roschon Johnson and Khalil Herbert. I think that's the right move. I think Swift has struggled quite a bit, and the other 2 backs have been more effective with the ball in their hands in the ground game. And that change has already slowly been happening since week 1. The first game of the year against the Tennessee Titans, DeAndre Swift was on the field for 70% of the offense's snaps. Last week against the Colts, 53%. Still more than half, but a 20% drop in his snaps. Whereas you've seen the number 2 running back, which was Travis Homer for the first 2 games. Now he's on injured reserve. So Roschon Johnson in the 3rd game. But the number 2 back goes from 16% in week 1. Travis Homer gets 16% of the snaps. To this week against the Colts, Roschon Johnson gets 37%. So that number 2 running back role has more than doubled in the number of snaps that they're on the field, while DeAndre Swift's continues to steadily come down. Now, through that process, Khalil Herbert's playing time has stayed pretty much exactly the same, 9%, 9%, 10% in each of the 3 games. So you'd like to see his role grow as Swift's declines, but more importantly, the most important part there is that Swift is declining, and that right now it's Roschon Johnson is really the main beneficiary of added playing time. Part of that too is that they've used some more 2 running back situations as well, where multiple backs are on the field, so guys get more playing time at the same time. Like their percentages by game won't add up to 100% because If they're on the field at the same time, they both get to count for that same snap, so they'll play more than 100% of the snaps. And same thing is true at tight end, where they use multiple tight ends a lot, so your tight end snap counts are never going to, by percentage, are never going to add up to 100%. But week 1, we all knew it. Hey, where the heck's Cole Kmet? Why is Gerald Everett playing so many snaps and not really doing much with those snaps? The first game of the season, Cole Kmet was on the field 48% of the time. Less than half of the Bears' offensive snaps, there was Cole Kmet, whereas Gerald Everett in that game was at 61%. So 61 to 48 was the Gerald Everett to Cole Kmet ratio there. But since then, Cole Kmet's snaps from week to week have gone up steadily, and Gerald Everett's snaps from week to week have dropped significantly on their way down. And even Mercedes Lewis is playing a little bit more. Since Keenan Allen's injury, they've used more 3 tight end sets, and Lewis has played a bit more. But now against the Colts, Cole Kmet was on the field 81% of the time. Compared to week 1, where he was below 50, now he's up to 81%. Like that's a very clear recognition and change of something that needed to be different. And Cole responded with 10 catches in this game and was huge for this Bears offense to get what little points they did get against the Colts defense. Whereas Gerald Everett goes from 61% in week 1 down to just 33%, a third of the snaps against the Colts. Cut his snap count or snap percentage basically in half, a little bit less than, a little bit more than half, but like basically in half for Gerald Everett, while Lewis is still kind of just steadily number 3 tight end snaps. So there seems to be here a clear recognition that DeAndre Swift needs to play less and other running backs need to play more, and Cole Kmet needs to play more while Gerald Everett plays less. And you can appreciate that it represents some level of self-awareness from this Bears offensive coaching staff saying, you know what, the players we thought were going to be better for us aren't playing as well. And rather than stubbornly continue to force them out there until they start to play better, we've got to just go with other guys at those positions, especially other guys who have been around here before and who we know what they are, as opposed to Swift and Gerald Everett were free agent signings this offseason that you were hoping would be a big boost for this Bears offense, but just haven't been yet. And the Bears have been forced to go back to guys who we know are reliable in Roschon Johnson, Khalil Herbert, and Cole Kmet. And in theory, as that trend continues, the Bears offense should get better and show more progress than we've seen so far. You've also seen that change, even one of those on the offensive line. Like, as much as the Bears aren't making, wholesale changes to the O-line, they were willing to say, all right, Nate Davis is injured and dealing with a groin injury, so Matt Pryor's your starting right guard. Like, clearly Nate Davis was healthy enough to play because he came into the game for one snap, basically, when Braxton Jones got hurt and Pryor moved over to left tackle. But nonetheless, the fact that Nate Davis was at least healthy enough to take the field and wasn't the starter and didn't rotate in but just wasn't playing, period, would kind of suggest to me like a benching or whatever, however close to a benching you could get without calling it a benching when you're sitting on the bench well healthy, and then or at least well healthy enough to play, and then only coming in the game when there's an injury on the offensive line that you had to fill in for. Like that to me signifies, hey, they're saying this right guard situation hasn't been good enough, so we're going to put somebody else in there. It's not like they felt so forced, like, oh, Nate Davis is so good that we got to have him out there even while he might be slightly injured with whatever he's dealing with. I think a groin, if I remember correctly. Like, he was healthy enough for that one snap, but he wasn't healthy enough to start? Or was that a very intentional decision to say, yeah, sorry, Nate, we're going to sit you down and get you healthy, but we also want Matt Pryor to play because we think he's the better option at right guard. I don't think Matt Pryor solved the issue per se. I don't know that he was worlds better. It was also one game, so I'm not willing to just say, okay, based on the 90 snaps of Matt Pryor we saw in the game, that's either thumbs up or thumbs down. Like, he deserves a little bit of time to settle in there. I mean, it's his first game starting in this offense with these players next to him and hasn't been practicing with them in the same way that Nate Davis has. Like, he's going to take a little time to settle in. But I do think, having gone through the Colts game and on the All-22 film and looking back at the last couple games too, it's very clear that the Chicago Bears offensive line problem is almost, not entirely, but like the majority of the Bears offensive line problem is on the interior. I don't think you need to worry about the offensive tackles as much. I think they're fine. Maybe not great, but they're fine. The interior is really where the problems go, and it's all three guys in there. So we'll kind of diagnose what's going on with the interior of the Bears offensive line and what hope they have to try and improve it next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, FanDuel wants to help you start the season with a big return because you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You don't even have to win that $5 bet. You just bet $5 on anything, and FanDuel is going to add an extra $200 in bonus bets right into your account. So you could look at this Bears-Rams matchup coming up on Sunday at noon, where the Bears are 2.5-point favorites at home on FanDuel Sportsbook. The money line is Bears minus 138 straight up. The over-under set at just 40.5, so expecting a low-scoring game there. A $5 bet on anything in this Bears-Rams game will get you $200 in bonus bets. Or if you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can do live play-by-play betting and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. It's your one-stop shop at FanDuel Sportsbook with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. One of the biggest steps the Chicago Bears need to take towards improving the offense around Caleb Williams and helping Caleb Williams' development is something to fix this interior offensive line, because I think that's the primary issue in the running game and the bigger issue in pass protection. And I'm not here to just excuse the mistakes that Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright have made at the offensive tackle spots. They have not been perfect. They need to be better. I think Braxton Jones especially needs to continue taking a step forward. He's had 4 penalties in 3 games here, and those have been critical here. And we don't think of Braxton Jones as a great run blocker, but in the running game, the problem is the interior. And in the passing game, more often than not, the problem is the interior. And I want to take a second to kind of explain how the problem manifests itself more so on the interior, and then kind of look at the Bears' options on the offensive line, because I think there's something we overlook about what they're dealing with up front. So let's start in the passing game here. Pressure up the middle or in front of Caleb Williams is more detrimental to the offense's success than pressure off the edges against offensive tackles. So like if you look at the sort of the total pass blocking numbers for the Bears offensive line, in terms of pressures and hurries and hits and sacks on Pro Football Focus, for example, like you'll find that the player who's given up the most pressures this season is Darnell Wright at right tackle with 9. Then it's Coleman Shelton with 8, Braxton Jones with 7, Nate Davis with 5, Tevin Jenkins with 5, and Matt Pryor gave up 2 in this last game. And then, a couple on a running back and tight end here and there. But so yes, Darnell Wright has given up the most pressure. But when the pressure comes off the right tackle, Caleb Williams can step up and around that, or can roll pretty easily away from that pressure. I mean, ideally, you don't want him to have to roll left, but, if it's Braxton Jones and the pressure from the left tackle, same idea, right? When the pressure comes from the tackle spot, unless it's totally going to blindside him, like Cole Kmet's sack that he gave up in this game, the strip sack of Caleb Williams, you can feel that. Usually you can feel the offensive lineman blocking him step up and around it and get out of the way, as opposed to pressure coming right in your face. Then you have to flee the pocket backwards and then try and get all the way around wherever your tackles are. And then it disturbs the angle that the tackles are blocking on. And those types of pressures tend to then cause more problems. And so when you've got your center having given up 8 pressures, 1 sack and 7 hurries up the middle, Nate Davis 5, Tevin Jenkins 5, that's 18 between those 3 guys, plus the 2 more that Matt Pryor adds in is 20 pressures from your interior compared to 16 from your exterior. Yes, it's 3 players versus 2, but those pressures up the middle are right in Caleb Williams' face. The other aspect here is that when you're getting pressure up the middle, generally that tends to be a lot quicker. The distance from the defensive tackle to the quarterback is a lot shorter than the distance from the defensive end to the quarterback. There's a horizontal distance they have to cover in addition to the vertical distance to get to the quarterback from the edges, as opposed to the defensive tackle just has to get vertical. There's fewer yards that the tackle has to take. So when Braxton Jones or Darnell Wright gives up pressure at offensive tackle, it takes a little longer for that pressure to get there. There's more time for Caleb Williams generally from edge pressure as opposed to interior pressure generally tends to be a little bit quicker. Again, there's always going to be counterexamples of that. Sometimes interior pressure can come late. Sometimes edge pressure can come early. But on the average, pressure given up by your tackles takes longer to get to the quarterback than it does pressure given up by the inside. So it's more disruptive when the interior pressure comes. Then in the running game, it's the interior that's causing a lot more of the problems for the Bears running backs than it is the tackles. Again, Braxton Jones is not a super strong run blocker. I'm not here to say, no, he's actually great. No, that's not the case. But in the Bears running scheme, the blocking of the interior players matters more. When you think about those stretch zone runs when they're trying to get to the outside, your offensive tackles, whether you're going left or right, their job, they're going up against a defensive end. The defensive end is trying to set the edge, and the offensive tackle is inherently lined up inside of the defensive end, right? There's no way for the tackle to consistently get around the defensive end to really hook him. The tackle is kind of meeting the defensive end where he is and making sure that he doesn't set his edge too deep in the backfield. But the defensive end is generally going to set some kind of an edge. Those plays, the outside runs, you go out and then you cut upfield at some point. You cut upfield wherever that edge is set. And you try and widen that edge as much as you can and then cut upfield. But you're not asking Braxton Jones to pulverize somebody on that play. You're not asking Darnell Wright to pulverize somebody on the play. They're just trying to hold up an edge where the running back can cut back against his back. But it's the guys on the interior that have to pass off defensive tackles to each other and then get to those linebackers. And way too often, the Bears either struggle to pass off that defensive tackle or struggle to get to that linebacker. And it's Tevin Jenkins, it's Coleman Shelton, it's Nate Davis, and now a little bit of Matt Pryor, but mostly Jenkins, Shelton, and Davis. Tevin Jenkins has had a horrible season trying to block the run this season. It has been really tough for him. He's losing millions of dollars every single week. During a contract year, he's been pretty good in pass protection overall. Run blocking has been far, far below his standard. Coleman Shelton, abysmal. Nate Davis, okay, hit and miss. He's probably been the best of the three, honestly, in run blocking, which is a problem, which is sad there. They just haven't been able to master that communication and take the right angles to get to the next level. And that's where so many of these run plays blow up, because it's a defensive tackle getting interior disruption right away, or it's a linebacker who comes in clean, unblocked, because the guard and center can't get to him. Because the tackle's job isn't to get to the linebackers. The offensive tackles are just dealing with the defensive ends. And you're not really seeing defensive ends blow up a lot of Bears running plays. It's defensive tackles, linebackers, and safeties and other guys coming into play that end up blowing these things up. So it's primarily left guard, center, right guard that are causing a lot of the problems in the running game and are the more disruptive problem in the passing game. So what can the Bears do about it? And I think the answer right now is not much. But I was thinking about how, Matt Pryor is kind of the guy that they've been using as their backup at every position, and how ideally Ryan Bates would be starting in here. And plus, we kind of forget the Bears have Larry Borom on injured reserve. And I'm left trying to make remember here, remind everyone that I think the Bears don't have any of their backups ideally healthy right now. Because I think if you structured a Bears depth chart at every position, Larry Borom would be your backup offensive tackle at both spots. Your first choice backup tackle would be Larry Borom when healthy. And your first choice backup guard or center, left guard, center, or right guard, would be Ryan Bates if he were healthy. Both of those guys on injured reserve. So your top choice to back up at all 5 offensive line positions are on injured reserve. Matt Pryor was kind of your number 2 choice to back up at tackle or guard. And now he's your first man in at right guard because you've kind of made the change with Nate Davis. So the Bears haven't been able to rely on the depth fully that they were counting on here because Borom and Bates have been on injured reserve. Because Bates can play both guard spots and center, and Borom can play both tackle and both guard spots, and Pryor can play both tackle and both guard spots. So if the Bears want to make a change at right guard, they could play Nate Davis there, they could play Matt Pryor there, they could play Ryan Bates there, they could play Larry Borom there. They have 4 different players they could play at right guard if they were all healthy, but only 2 of them are healthy. So it's Davis or Matt Pryor right now. They have 2 different players they could play at center, Coleman Shelton and Ryan Bates, but only one of those 2 players is healthy right now. So it's Shelton. I mean, they could play Doug Kramer, but Lord, don't put Doug Kramer on this field. I mean, absolutely not. Don't put Doug Kramer on this field. So I mean, they would normally have so many different options if they wanted to make a change to this lineup, but their options to change are very limited. But fortunately, we've seen Shane Waldron be willing to change. We just went through running back playing time, tight end playing time. They've already made a change at right guard. I would expect once Ryan Bates is healthy, and we don't know when that's going to be, he should start at center. They should make a change at center when they have a healthy Ryan Bates to make that change. And then, unless you really feel like he should play right guard, but I like to think between Pryor and Borum, one of those two can be a better right guard option than Nate Davis. Or maybe Nate Davis can get truly fully healthy and play better football. I don't think you're going to bench Tevin Jenkins or anything right now, even though I think he's struggling a little bit. But I think I have more confidence that Jenkins can return to form. And then maybe you can make the right combination of center and right guard and piece together an offensive line here that can open up holes in the running game and give Caleb Williams good pass protection and maybe give this Bears offense something close to an average NFL offense that can take advantage of what the defense does. Like, is that being too optimistic here? I don't know. I'm trying to give you some hope here after a rough offensive performance on Sunday and another Chicago Bears loss. Should be a good matchup this week against a bad Los Angeles Rams defense. We'll check in with our friends from Locked On Rams later this week for Crossover Thursday. So make sure you come back to Locked On Bears each and every day. Make us your first listen by hitting that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen, check out Locked On NFL, now with 2 shows every day. I'm co-hosting this morning with Tyler Rowland, breaking down the Jags-Bills Monday night game and the Commanders-Bengals Monday night, a Monday night doubleheader. So if you missed either of those games, we'll have all the biggest storylines for you coming out of those ones, plus some of the other surprises from the NFL Sunday weekend. So go check out Locked On NFL, wherever you find this podcast. Coming back tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Bears and another opportunity to bear down.